Hi, my name is Amy Pisani, and I'm the Executive Director of Vaccinate Your Family. I just wanted to let you all know that we are muting everyone. So as the speakers come in, you need to unmute yourself. That will help us have a really great conversation. We're so pleased to have you here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Vaccinate Your Family, and then I'm going to introduce our wonderful guests from the FDA. We will be, again, recording this. We will be sharing the recording with you. We will also share the slides. There's only a few slides. You're more than welcome to share the recording with your members, with your friends, etc. And I think from here, we'll just begin, and we really do want to have a robust conversation. You can either put your questions into the comment section, or you can put your name in the comment section, and we will call out your name so that you can ask your questions in person, which is really preferable to me, but more than happy to read through the questions as well. So just a little bit about Vaccinate Your Family. We have been in business now for almost 30 years. Actually, next year is our 30th anniversary. And our organization was founded by former First Lady Rosalynn Carter and former First Lady of Arkansas, Mrs. Betty Bumpers. And their goal was to ensure the vaccination of children in the United States of America and beyond. And we really did focus mainly on children for about 25 years almost. We worked very hard on access issues, breaking down barriers to vaccination. And then years ago, we decided that you can't protect a child unless you protect their family as well. And so we did expand, and now we are Vaccinate Your Family. We do quite a bit of work educating the public. We have a very robust social media presence. We reach several million people a year on our social media platforms. What we're really most proud of is our website. It is WHO certified, which means that it is considered a scientifically accurate website. There's only a handful of certified websites here in the US, but there's also many across the world. Our website is very, it's filled with facts about everything you can possibly need on vaccines. And so we would really do welcome you to join. Come into our website, come ask questions of us. If something's not there that you need for your communities, please let us know, and we'd be happy to fill those in. We do have a wonderful app that's coming out in about a month. We'll talk about how do you pay for vaccines for your family, because a lot of people are struggling right now. They're losing employment, they're gaining employment. They may not know how to pay for vaccines for themselves, for their parents, for their children. And so we're really trying, again, hard to break down those types of barriers. What we really do pride ourselves is with allowing people to ask the really tough questions. And on our Facebook page, on our website, we answer every kind of question you can possibly imagine. I'm breastfeeding my baby. Why do I need to vaccinate him or her? Can you tell me about the safety systems in the United States? And what are the contents of vaccines? Are they safe for me and my family? And we have a variety of resources that would be wonderful for your partners if you wanted to share them. And so there's several links here. We have flu vaccination social media graphics and videos. We've been working hard with our partners around the country to try to ensure the diverse imagery and messaging in our materials. This is always a challenge. I don't think there's ever going to be enough. But I would say the vaccine world is coming to terms with the fact that we need to do a better job at diversifying our messaging, not just sort of changing the visuals, but really understanding the root causes for some hesitancy in vaccinations in this country. We have resources for parents and parents-to-be. We have a web page on COVID and COVID-19 vaccines when they come along. So we'll be constantly updating that. And so I do welcome you to visit our site and take a look at some of those materials. And then before we move on, I just wanted to mention a couple of issues on the federal level. Disparities in vaccinations are nothing new. And our partners around the country have been trying to deal with particularly the disparities in adult immunizations. The difference between whites, Blacks, and Asians have been noted for years, and we've been working on several bills to try to alleviate this problem. Now, with the COVID crisis, we're seeing that the disparities not only in who is greatly affected by the virus, but also those who lack access to potential vaccines is becoming the forefront. And so I really would welcome you to come and look at our State of the ImmUnion report, we call it, and we put it out every year to Congress. It comes out the week of the State of the Union, as you can imagine. And you can find it on our page very easily. It's in the Take Action section. It's also on our homepage. And then on our, when COVID struck, we went back to the drawing board and we created a special edition for COVID. And they were the specific actions that we wanted Congress to take right now to ensure the equal distribution of vaccines, help our public health partners out in this enormous task. And so we know that $1 billion is needed. We have been low funded for vaccinations for decades. So these are the kind of numbers that we're looking at and that we asked Congress for. We have not seen an appropriation from Congress for the dissemination of vaccinations. We've seen a lot of other appropriations come through to to help people get through the crisis, but they have not gone back to the drawing board and put out a request for funding for the CDC and state health departments to get these vaccines to where they need to be. And so we're really calling on everyone to really reach out to your members and say, this is the time. We can't even think about a lame duck session. You must pass legislation now to help protect our communities. So again, you can find that on our website, and I'm always happy to talk to you more on that front. So in the meantime, while we're waiting for these amazing vaccines to be approved by the FDA and then recommended by the CDC, just a couple things I wanted to cover, and I think Dr. Marks is going to go into more detail on the safety oversight. But suffice it to say that this country has the most robust safety oversight systems in the world. Dr. Marks and our friends at the FDA will talk about the approval process. But once they're recommended and put on the schedule, the safety oversight becomes even more, well, I wouldn't say more robust, but is quite robust. So the ACIP recommends the vaccine for specific age groups, and that's the committee at the CDC. That approves the vaccines. They meet typically 3 times a year. Now they're meeting very, very often. So they consider all the different recommendations. They consider whether a vaccine is better for an adult, someone over 65, et cetera, et cetera. And they come out with their recommendations. And when that is done, the vaccine safety systems really come into place. And so there's the vaccine adverse event reporting system. And that's a reporting system where anyone can report an adverse event, a doctor, an individual, and those reports are looked at. And then if they see that there's a trigger, more research will be done. And then the vaccine safety data link and what was called PRISM, which may or may not be changing its name. That's another system. That's a network of healthcare organizations that have millions and millions of data on vaccinations in there. And so they're able to see if there's any type of trigger of a potential adverse event to a vaccine. And then there's also the CISA project. So there's several projects out there that work on safety. And a new system that's being put in place by the CDC is called VSafe. And this is a novel system that's been created due to COVID. And what they're planning on doing is, as they start to vaccinate the millions of people in the early phases, they're going to ask them to be part of a texting program. And they'll be following up with them after they get vaccinated to ensure that they don't have any adverse events. And if they do, it will trigger reporting into the system. I believe that the person will not put this report in themselves. I believe someone will trigger it. It will trigger and someone will do it for them. But we're learning more about that every day. It makes me feel better, and it makes me feel like I'll know when to vaccinate myself and my family, knowing that all these systems are in place. And so just wanted to mention that before we moved on with the overall process that the FDA will go through to determine whether or not vaccines are safe and vaccines should be given the emergency use authorization. And so with that, we were going to move on, and we're going to welcome our special guest. We have Dr. Stephen Hahn, who is the commissioner over at the FDA. He is a physician, scientist, and healthcare leader with an extensive background in patient care, academic research, and executive leadership. I'm sure you've all seen Dr. Hahn in the news, and he's doing an amazing job moving forward this process. We also have Dr. Marks. He's the director of the Centers for Biologic Evaluation and Research at the FDA. That center is responsible for ensuring the safety and effectiveness of biological products, including vaccines. And then we're also welcoming Rear Admiral Sharday Aroajo, who serves as the Associate Commissioner for Minority Health and the Director of the Office of Minority Health and Health Equity. She's in the Office of the Commissioner at the FDA. And I wanted to share one slide. They're not going to have slides today, but I just wanted to pull this forward for you. This is the website where they have quite a bit of information at the FDA. It has all types of resources. It has wonderful videos and toolkits. So I would urge you to go ahead and take a peek over there. And again, I'll be sharing these slides so you don't have to write all of this down. And I would recommend, as we're going forward, since we have so many wonderful guests, if you wanted to make it easier to view the speakers, you just go to your top right and click on view speaker. I know a lot of you have been on Zoom many times, but I always find it a little bit easier so that you can see the speaker as they're speaking. So again, thank you so very much, all of you, for coming. And Dr. Hahn, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you to Vaccinate Your Family. This is such an important call today about an important subject, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion, and I'd love for it to be a discussion, and we will answer your questions. Some of you may have questions that are outside of the domain of FDA. We'll let you know that, but if we have information to provide for that specific subject, we'll be very happy to do that. I'm very pleased and honored to be joined today by my colleague, Dr. Peter Marks, who's the director for Center for Biologics Evaluation Research. And as Amy said, that's the center within FDA that's in charge of reviewing and authorizing any vaccine application that the FDA would receive. And also Rear Admiral Charday Aroajo. And as Amy mentioned, Dr. Aroajo is our Associate Commissioner for Minority Health and the Director of our Office of Minority Health and Health Equity. And they have just been tremendous during this pandemic in terms of helping us with our outreach, but also with the specifics, particularly around clinical trials and making sure that we have the appropriate diversity for that. So I wanted to start by thanking all of you for your tremendous work in the public health space and your commitment and your leadership during this challenging time. You may know that FDA is an agency, it's a federal agency focused on using science. It's science in action to protect and promote the health and safety of the American public. And we've been engaged around the clock in combating the COVID-19 pandemic for nearly 9 months. And it has indeed been a painful period for everyone, one that has caused our families and communities to change how we live. It's triggered, as Amy mentioned, enormous economic and social disruption. And I think worst of all, the disease has led to many personal tragedies, and our hearts go out to those who have suffered from the COVID-19 pandemic. At the FDA, we've been working since the earliest days to advance the response of U.S. government. We put a significant amount of resources and tools in our search for solutions. And as we've sought answers and worked to reach sound decisions, the FDA's North Star has always been and will always be the application of rigorous science and good data. That is our promise to the American people. And this solid foundation has enabled the agency to address things like testing shortages, expand increases in personal protective equipment, ventilators, ensure that we have access to necessary medical products, counter the sale of fraudulent products, which many of you may have seen online, and support the development of treatments and vaccines. Our mission remains to protect and promote the public health, and it makes sense that FDA is uniquely prepared to respond to this kind of public health emergency. Now, after the terrorist attacks of 9/11, Congress created the Emergency Use Authorization, and you may have heard this described as EUA. We'll try to stay away from the acronyms, but Emergency Use Authorization, this is a special authority that FDA has to ensure that potentially life-saving medical products could be available to people in medical need before they've been fully studied. Now, we've used that authority throughout this pandemic, and we've issued more than 300 emergency use authorizations to authorize some 600 individual products to help us fight the COVID-19 pandemic. And just to put this into context, that is 10 times the amount of EUAs issued by the FDA during all previous public health emergencies. But we always carefully consider the risks and the benefits when we look at an emergency use authorization. And we very much are looking at the safety of medical products. And nowhere is that more important than with vaccines, because we realize that unlike a treatment, which may be given to someone who's sick and either in the emergency room or on a ventilator in the intensive care unit, a vaccine goes to individuals who are healthy, who may have other illnesses such as diabetes and hypertension, but who don't have COVID-19. So as the FDA looks at applications for vaccines, and we assess the risk and benefit. That's something that our experts do every day. We, of course, keep in mind that this is a medical product, a vaccine that's going to go to healthy individuals. And another way that we're strengthening our work, both in response to the pandemic and for future preparedness, is through efforts to increase the diversity of participants in clinical trials. This has been a focus of the FDA for a number of years and has been very, very important during COVID-19. We recently issued guidance for developers of vaccines on how to design both those trials, but also other trials for drugs and biologics. And we've made it a point to say that we need you to have clinical trials that are representative of all of America, so that when FDA makes its very important decisions around the safety and efficacy of any medical product, but particularly vaccines, we want that decision to be generalizable to all of America. So we'll be paying very close attention to those data as we receive them. So I just wanted to outline a few principles that the agency has followed as we move closer to the possibility of having a vaccine application before us. First of all, we all recognize the urgency of the situation and the need for successful and speedy development of products, but we cannot and we will not at FDA shortcut the essential review that our career scientists who have many years of experience must undertake to ensure the safety and effectiveness of any treatment or vaccine. Again, speed is important, but we also must make sure that our rigorous standards, which we've used for years and our scientists have employed for years for safety, accuracy, and effectiveness, are again being applied. This is a promise I want to make to you on behalf of the entire agency and our 17,000 plus employees. FDA will not authorize or approve any COVID-19 vaccine until our career scientists have pored over the data and make sure that such an approval or authorization meets our rigorous standards. There's a second related point why this is so important. That is because you all, the public, must have full trust in FDA's review process and complete confidence in whatever products we approve or authorize, and faith in FDA's ongoing commitment to protect the public health. And confidence is particularly important when we begin a national vaccine campaign. Indeed, the guidances that we've issued on the subject were designed in part to help the public understand our science-based decision-making and what kind of criteria we're going to use and the process we're going to use. We believe that this transparency around the actual criteria and the process will help ensure that people understand it and help to build confidence in our processes. We have been doing this for years. We have experts, and as Amy mentioned, they are respected around the world, FDA scientists. And you may not know this, but our FDA, your FDA, America's FDA, is one of the few, if not the only regulatory agency that looks at raw data from a clinical trial. We don't read a press release. We don't just read a scientific paper. We look at the data. Our scientists, our statisticians, our nurses, our doctors, our pharmacists look at the data. We draw our own conclusions on behalf of the American people. And our vaccine division is absolutely outstanding, and they've been doing this for years. Now, each of you can play an important role to help us with vaccine confidence, and I was so glad to have the partnership of Amy and her organization. Your understanding of our process, how it can support the development of vaccines, and how FDA applies the best science and data to make good decisions can go a long way toward helping to boost public understanding and confidence in FDA and the products such as vaccines that we authorize or approve. Now, the perspective is critical at any time, but particularly now. So I hope we can count on your support. I hope we can earn your support. We're really happy to be here and to answer your questions today. From our vantage, the FDA will continue to apply its energy, resourcefulness, and scientific rigor so that hopefully soon we can get beyond these challenges and return to a more normal, healthier daily life. And now I'd like to turn over the conversation to Dr. Peter Marks, who's the director of the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research. Peter.
So thanks. What I'll do is, if it's okay, just talk a little bit about what we will do in the process of getting these applications, what people can expect over the next couple of weeks as these applications come in, and the level of transparency that we're trying to achieve here, and explain a little bit as we go the difference between what will happen with an emergency use authorization vaccine versus a traditionally licensed vaccine. So, as you know, the manufacturers have done these large clinical trials that are involving somewhere between 30 and 45,000 people. That means 15 to 22,500 people vaccinated with these vaccines. So that's a large number of people treated. They are now crossing this threshold that we've asked for of needing a median of 2 months of follow-up for safety. And they're, unfortunately, because of the large number of COVID cases, they're rapidly coming to their endpoints. Unfortunately and fortunately, it's a kind of bittersweet thing. The good news is that we now are very hopeful that we're going to have some very effective vaccines. And so how are they going to go through this process? Well, the data that the manufacturers have could be submitted by one of two pathways. What you heard about earlier, the emergency use authorization pathway, or a typical biologics license application. The biologics license application requires a lot of formal preparation of materials. It's a very prescribed format. In this period of time where we're so urgently in need of a vaccine, we're able to use some of the flexibility that we will have from the emergency use authorization process to be able to get much of the same information, albeit not exactly the same information, that will allow us to make a very clear decision that a vaccine is safe and effective for all of us. And the way we'll do that is by having our reviewers, our career scientists, our career staff, they will look at the data that comes in for the manufacturing of the vaccine. So we'll understand, is this manufacturing consistent with the quality standards that we have at FDA? We will look at the data that the companies have put together for the safety and effectiveness and make sure that they are what they say they are, that we understand the implications for the various different patient populations, the various minority populations that have been enrolled, the older patient populations that have been enrolled. And we'll then also look at all the different safety events and try to understand the best way to, in fact, potentially help minimize any adverse safety events. And finally, as we put this all together, we'll also put together a plan for how we will look at these vaccines after they are deployed. And we already alluded to that with these safety monitoring systems that are in place in the United States through the Centers for Disease Control and the Food and Drug Administration that work together to put together actually several layers of overlapping safety surveillance. So there'll be a rigorous process of internal review at FDA. We will put together a briefing document for our advisory committee meeting. The sponsor, the company that's making the vaccine, will put together a similar type of document. Those documents will be looked over by our advisors. There will be a public advisory committee meeting for each of the vaccines that'll last about a day. There'll be obviously a discussion of whether there are any concerns. The advisory committee will make some decision about whether to recommend that the vaccine is safe and effective. And after that, we'll go back and put that together, make sure we, in putting everything together, feel that decision that the advisory committee meeting comes is supported by everything. And will then potentially authorize a vaccine with the emergency use authorization provisions. That allows us to put together a relatively brief memo on the order of pages as opposed to book size, describing why we feel the vaccine can be deployed. That will actually get these vaccines to people in a matter of weeks after a submission, rather than what would otherwise be many weeks or months. And that's because the biologics license application is just so much more information. It has many different analyses in it. We go through the line listings. We have to have much in the way of manufacturing validation. And although there shouldn't be any mistake about it, we will feel comfortable that the manufacturing is within our standards, that the safety and efficacy data are within our standards, it won't be exactly the same of biologics license application, but it'll be close. And the data regarding efficacy is going to have to be clear and compelling, not just the minimum bar standard of the product may be effective. It's going to have to really show the kind of effectiveness that we'd like to see. So that's what one can expect out of this. Obviously, there's a balance here. You could say, well, why not just wait for a biologics license application? Why not wait for 6 months or 12 months of safety follow-up? But I think we all recognize when we go home at night and watch the news, or when we go up from our basements and turn on the television set, as I do sometimes, that this is a real crisis, and days, weeks matter here in terms of trying to save people's lives. So what we take our job seriously. We have to do our job right. We have to make it transparent what we're doing, so people feel confidence in the vaccines that we will authorize or approve. And hopefully then we'll all go out, get vaccinated, and hopefully then come back to a more normal lifestyle in the not too distant future.
Thank you, Dr. Marks. And now I believe Rear Admiral Aroajo will have some remarks. So we're really honored to have her here today. Rear Admiral.
Thank you, Dr. Hahn, and good afternoon, everyone. It's truly a pleasure to be here with all of you today, and I really appreciate the opportunity to participate. And I do just want to start by first thanking you and your organizations for all of your hard work, commitment, and leadership during this challenging time as COVID-19 continues to disproportionately impact our racial and ethnic minority communities, our tribal communities, and other diverse groups. And I've been really fortunate to have the privilege to work with many of you and your organizations. And just to provide a little bit of background about the Office of Minority Health and Health Equity at FDA, we work to protect and promote the health of diverse populations by really focusing our efforts on research and outreach and communication that works towards addressing health disparities. And of course, we work across the agency. We also work very closely with both public and private sector stakeholders. And as Dr. Hahn mentioned, the FDA continues to work to advance diverse participation in clinical trials. And this is a key priority area for the Office of Minority Health and Health Equity. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, we have really worked to amplify and raise awareness about the need for diverse participation in clinical trials. And one of the ways that we've been able to do this is through our ongoing multimedia public education and outreach campaign that really works to address some of the barriers preventing diverse groups from participating in clinical trials through a variety of culturally and linguistically competent strategies, tools, and resources. And this is a campaign that's been ongoing for a number of years. And some of the resources that we have include education materials in multiple languages. We have a dedicated webpage with public service announcements and videos. We, of course, engage in social media outreach, as well as ongoing collaborations and partnerships with our stakeholders. So as I mentioned, throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, we have really been working to increase amplification of clinical trial diversity messages. We have also worked to provide weekly FDA COVID-19 communications to our stakeholders, and we've developed and translated materials to help consumers make informed decisions about their health. And Amy highlighted this just a little while ago with the slide that she shared, but I do want to talk a little bit about some of our overarching communication efforts. The FDA held a listening session with diverse health professional organizations early on in the pandemic so that we could learn more about the gaps and the needs of our racial and ethnic minority communities, and so that we could also share information about FDA's COVID-19 activities. We have also been supporting efforts in collaboration with our FDA centers and offices to make sure that we are providing the most current and accurate COVID-19 information to diverse communities and to the public overall. And some examples of this include our FDA's COVID-19 webpage, where we have FDA's COVID-19 frequently asked questions. We've also developed a COVID-19 multilingual resources webpage that features a growing collection of educational materials in Spanish and simplified Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, among a number of other languages. And these materials are really important because they provide details on pertinent COVID-19 topics, such as social distancing, diagnostic testing, vaccine development, like we're talking about today, fraudulent medical products, blood and plasma donation, food safety, as well as a number of other topics. And some of our efforts to continue to enhance our outreach and dissemination, the FDA has also developed toolkits. So some of those toolkits include our COVID-19 bilingual social media toolkit that features consumer-friendly messages, culturally appropriate graphics, and this toolkit is really important because it allows our stakeholders to have ready-to-use messages that can be shared with their communities. We have also developed tools to help our health professionals, and this includes, for example, a patient outreach toolkit that's designed to help health professionals share COVID-19 information with their patients as well as others in their community. And we are really working closely with all of our FDA centers and offices to ensure that we are supporting all of our agency efforts in response to this pandemic. And we know, of course, that COVID-19 requires all of us to work together. And I truly value your input, your time today, and your expertise so that we can continue to strengthen our response efforts. And I look forward to continuing to work with all of you and your organizations, as well as with all of our stakeholders in response to this pandemic, as well as to continue to amplify our communications to our diverse communities and the public at large. Thank you.
Thank you, Sade. I'm so grateful to have you here as well. And it's a pleasure to meet you. I haven't had a chance to meet you yet in this new world that we're in. I'm going to open it up to questions. I did get a couple questions via email before we started. And so I will ask a couple of those first. And if you want to ask, if you would like to ask a question, it's not that large of a group. I think we'll be able to make this happen pretty easily. Just pop your name into the chat on the side. I hope you can see where the chat is. I think you, at the very bottom of your page, it says mute, stop video. There's a chat in there. So just put it in the chat and put it to everyone, your name and your affiliation, and then we'll be happy to have you ask your own question. One thing that I wanted to ask Dr. Marks specifically, we're hearing all this information about 90%, 95% effectiveness in the vaccines that are coming to market for Pfizer, Moderna, et cetera. Can you just talk a little bit about what exactly it means to say that a vaccine is 95% effective 28 days after the first dose, like with the vaccinated versus the placebo group? Can you just kind of explain that in English to people?
Yeah, so just to give everyone an example of what we're talking about in terms of efficacy here, about why this very exciting. You see people excited about these results. Vaccines that we commonly use have a range of efficacy when you compare them against placebo, something that's salt water that you inject, in this particular case. So when they vaccinated a large group of people and then looked for cases of COVID-19, in the case of what for instance Pfizer reported or what Moderna reported, what that's saying is that of 100 cases of COVID-19, I'm just rounding the number here, 95 of them occurred in people who were not vaccinated with the vaccine, and only 5 occurred in those that were vaccinated, which means that's saying that you've got this 95% of people were protected. That's pretty good for a vaccine. There are some vaccines that have even better efficacy than that, but it's hard to find. It's true the childhood measles vaccine, which is a live virus vaccine, is up there at 98%, 99%, but 95% is pretty good. And what is going to be very important, and this is one of the things that we'll look at, is to make sure that 95% is the same in various different groups, so that we'd like to see if that 95% is the same in older people as in younger people, in people of color as in Caucasian people, in different groups. That's going to be really an important thing. So I think that efficacy is the kind of efficacy that one would need if one wants to start to have, and that's really a great start towards being able to get towards herd immunity against COVID-19. And you've probably heard this term, but what herd immunity means is that to simplify it, it means that enough of the people have either had the virus or are vaccinated such that the virus has nowhere to go but out. Okay, there's so many people immune to it that there's nowhere for the vaccine to get transmitted, and so it just goes away. That's what happened to smallpox. It's what happened to polio in the United States. It's what happened largely to measles when we don't have re-imported cases because the vaccination rates get lower. So that's the whole hope here, is that with a vaccine that has that type of effectiveness, that if we can get 70–80% of people vaccinated with a vaccine like that, this will start to take care of itself, because that's where modeling says you don't have to vaccinate every last person, but you just got to get above some threshold. And you might have heard Dr. Fauci talking about, for a vaccine with an efficacy like this, it's probably going to be 70 or 80% of people will need to be vaccinated or otherwise be immune. So I think this is an exciting development. And we should be, obviously we have to do our due diligence at FDA, but if these things are borne out, we should be enthusiastic about where these vaccines are and the other vaccines coming behind them, which hopefully will have similar efficacy.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Marks. I really appreciate that. Okay, Janice Mathis from the National Council of Negro Women, do you have a question for us?
Well, first, I'd like to thank you, Amy, for convening this today and inviting NCNW to be a part of it. And I want to thank all of my NCNW affiliates for being here. They didn't get much notice. I was kind of busy over the weekend and didn't get the notice out until actually yesterday. But I'm pleased to report that we have on the line with us the president of the National Council of Negro Women, Janetta Cole, president of Delta Sigma Theta, Bev Smith, American Federation of Teachers, National Association of University Women, Gamma Phi Delta, Eta Phi Beta, Roz Hannibal Booker. So just thank you to all my people. Thank you for being here. We're getting great comments in the chat. I've got a bunch of questions, but I will settle on this one, Amy. And I was just on a call earlier with some folk from the National Medical Association and from Morehouse, and we were talking about hesitancy and talking about trust. And I hear all the precautions and the protocols and the efforts to put out good information. But one of the things that kept coming up in this prior call, why us, why now? And the doctor said, this is a big deal, but hypertension was a big deal, and diabetes was a big deal, and HIV and AIDS is a big deal. Some of this skepticism is born out of people feeling like, okay, when it was just us or primarily Black folks suffering, it didn't seem like such a big deal. But now it is. I wonder if any of the professionals on there would talk to us about how do we respond to that kind of skepticism? I mean, that's really where the rubber's going to meet the road.
So I'll start if you don't mind. That's Steve Hahn here, Commissioner.
Hey, Steve.
It's a really good question, and it's unfortunate we can't erase the past. We can't change what happened, but we do need to acknowledge it. And I think one of the situations here that we're faced with is that everyone in America, everyone around the world, is facing a significant amount of pain and hardship because of this. And this is really a plea, if you will, a call for all of us to be together at this point, because it is affecting us. And, I think one of the things that struck me, I was a cancer doctor before I became commissioner, and I saw the effects of people not having access to care for preventative screening mammograms, for et cetera, PSA blood tests for prostate cancer. And we've seen the ravages of inequities during the pandemic. And we've seen that the most vulnerable in society have been affected by this pandemic. If we can come together, if we can talk about how important it is to employ the #1 public health measure we have for prevention of disease, for a disease that disproportionately affects those who are most vulnerable and those who are most need and those who have really a lot of inequities for access to care. This is the reason that we have to pull together, because we have a world that we need to make better. And the first start is to try to help those who are disproportionately affected by this COVID-19. So my plea, my sincerest wish is that as a country, as a world, we'll come together. We'll realize that we have to do this for each other. And that the way that we do this is to get vaccinated when appropriate, and then prevent our most vulnerable from getting sick. Because that is of utmost importance, whether it's the elderly, whether it's grandma in the nursing home, whether it's folks who live in underserved areas. This has been a tragedy of COVID-19, and we absolutely have a moral obligation to respond to that.
Thank you, Steve.
Lenore Reese, I believe that you sent me a question via email. Is that correct? Would you like to unmute yourself and ask in person instead?
I can, sure. Thank you for being on the call today. My concern is, or question is, with so many people out of work and losing health insurance, will they have to pay for this vaccine, or will it be made available for free?
That's a superb question, because it doesn't matter if we have a vaccine, but no one can afford it, goodness knows. So the commitment has been made from U.S. government to provide the vaccine at no cost to individuals. There's a variety of groups that are involved in that, CMS being one of them. And they have a reimbursement plan in place to reimburse fully for the vaccine. U.S. government, as you know, Lenore, our tax dollars went to pay for the development of some of these vaccines. And in addition to that, for those that we didn't, we've purchased the vaccine, and that's with taxpayer dollars. So there will be more to come, Lenore, about the distribution plan, and U.S. government will be at the frontier in terms of helping to ensure that distribution.
Thank you very much.
I had another question online from, I think it's Regina from Chums Incorporated. I believe you're on the call, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Would you like to ask the question yourself, or would you like me to read it? I can read it.
Yes, I had several questions, but I'll ask the first one. And that is, what do we know about how long these vaccines might protect you, and what message will go out to the public about length of protection? My concern is that just as we have flu vaccines and we have different versions in different years, what do we know about vaccines for COVID moving forward and length of protection?
This is Peter. What a great question. And I wish I had a better answer than the one I'm going to tell you. Is that we are unfortunately going to have to learn something about the duration as we go. We know that the vaccines will protect for several months. We don't know whether it's going to be long-term protection over years or whether it's going to be a year. And that's something we're going to learn by following this large cohort of vaccinated people over the course of time and looking at their immune response over the course of time, because that's something we can do even without having them, having them to get sick with anything. We can just see how long they maintain aspects of the immune response. We don't have a great predictor yet for that. We'll hopefully know from the experience with these first vaccines. But I would, for those who might be skeptical about saying, well, maybe I should wait till I get one that has a longer duration of action, I think the compelling thing is that right now we're in a situation where if we don't all get vaccinated and do something soon, vaccination will be almost a moot point, because this virus will spread across that much of the population. So I think we're willing to take a little uncertainty here in duration of protection, because we know that as long as we can get several months of protection, we can potentially break this cycle of COVID-19 and actually be able to get on with really important things. Because something that has gone underappreciated here, and I mean, COVID-19 is terrible, But as somebody who is an internist and also a hematologist oncologist, as an internist, the internist me knows that I know from my family members, they haven't gone to get routine care for many things. There are people who are out there that are not getting routine care. So we need to be able to get back to the things that we need to get to for our healthcare, for our economy, for our children's lives too. So I wish I had a better answer that we could predict by modeling, which we might be able to do in a couple of months, how long the duration of protection is. But right at this point, the best I can say is, well, it'll be a matter of months, and we're going to watch very closely to try to understand.
Well, I actually think your answer is a good answer, and we need to be that transparent with the public as we ask them to take this vaccine, because we don't want people to think, well, I'll take it once and then I'll be done. But we also need to emphasize that we need for you to take it right now for yourself, but also because we need to break this cycle. So thank you for that.
Well taken. Really important messaging. Thank you.
And Regina, this is Amy. What is CHUMS Incorporated?
CHUMS is a social service organization. We have over 30 chapters across the nation. We focus on children. Our theme is listening to the children. So we do service projects that promote the welfare of children and their families across the nation.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much. And Lenore was from Gamma Phi Delta. I didn't say that before. So I have another person who wants to ask a question. I have to go back to the chat because they're starting to scroll through. Robin Hunter, can you ask your question and tell us who your affiliation is as well, please?
Yes, good afternoon, sisters, brothers, doctors, Ms. Pisani, Admiral. I am here representing Zeta Phi Beta sorority, which is another one of the groups represented on this call. And some of my questions have already been addressed, but I do want to follow up in the line that we're just mentioning regarding hesitancy, trust, the thoughts of experimentation that are so deeply seated among our family and friends. And in the messaging going forward, what other things do we need to share in being transparent? For example, you get an immunization or a vaccination and then you don't feel well and you don't have a provider. How do we network our family members and friends? You know, the truck can come to their neighborhood, give them the vaccination, and then they feel isolated because they have no place to go. I did enjoy hearing about the text messaging and follow-up, but what's next? So maybe one of you can address that. Thank you.
Admiral, maybe that would be something for you. I know that you're working with communications.
Sure, I'm happy to start. I think one of the things that we've been really working to do is through forums like the one here today, as well as making sure that we are out there speaking, that we are engaging with all of our stakeholders to make sure that, one, they understand the resources that we have available, because we do have a number of resources available that all of our stakeholders can use as they're working to educate their communities. So I think that's one of the things that we've been doing. In addition to that, we've been really trying to make sure that we're highlighting the information that FDA has available, the resources through social media. We know right now we're in a really virtual environment, so we've been doing a lot of that social media outreach. We've been also partnering with our other sister offices of minority health across the Department of Health and Human Services as well, and the efforts that they're doing to also make sure that we are reaching our diverse communities and highlighting the information that Dr. Hahn and Dr. Marks have shared today. And the one thing that I will mention, everything that we highlighted is available on the FDA webpage. We also, just to mention that our office, we will actually ship materials to you if you need them, if you have a community event or something you're hosting. So I just want to make sure that we're highlighting how we are really trying to make sure that we're reaching our communities, that they know the resources that are out there, that they have the most current and accurate information, and that they have ways to actually receive that information.
Terrific, thank you. You know, it's funny, everybody always says, oh, I got a fever, I must be sick. My family does it all the time. My husband's the biggest complainer about the flu vaccine. And then I got him to get the flu and the shingles at the same time, which was the worst thing I could have done. But the best part about having a fever, it's such a simple answer. Your body has detected an invader. It is building up antibodies against that invader, which is a killed virus that will not give you the flu. And you have a fever because of it. It's such a simple, but I think it's an amazing message to give to people. I think it's pretty cool that you get a virus, that you get a fever from a vaccine. I don't know, but I am a little bit of a science geek. Okay, great. I have a couple other folks. Well, first of all, I had another one in writing that I just wanted to read. Specifically, what are the plans for educating? So if someone is, well, we did the vaccine adverse part, but so people wanted to know if it was covered, and we know that the vaccine will be free for communities for a period of time, right? Those are the vaccines that are paid for with the taxpayer dollars. So those are probably, and Dr. Hahn, you might want to correct me if I'm wrong. Those are the vaccines that got the initial kickstart funding from the federal government, correct? But we don't know about vaccines coming down the pike. We will potentially have to pay for those eventually.
I think that's to be determined by U.S. government. But the vaccines that are furthest along are being supported by U.S. government. So it could potentially be an issue down the road.
Okay. So the biggest question I think that we're facing right now is, fine, we get a vaccine, FDA does an amazing job, approves it, gives it the EUA, and then it goes to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And Dr. Marks, am I right? You're planning on having a meeting pretty soon, pretty close to after Thanksgiving, and then the CDC will host their meeting, what, 2 or 3 days later to make the decisions on who receives the vaccine? Can you just talk about the timeline that we're looking at?
Right. So the timeline that we're looking at, and I'm going to be very rough about this, is sometime towards the first half of December. If we get an application when we think we will, our first application, we will have some type of an the advisory committee meeting on, I can't tell you what date, but we'll have our advisory committee meeting, our vaccines advisory committee meeting will meet on to discuss the application. What will happen is actually first, about 2 or 3 days before that meeting, we will make public our reviews of the information, and the manufacturer will make public their presentation that they're going to be giving about the vaccine. So people will have that in advance. That's what the advisory committee will see, and the public will be able to look at that. About 2 days later, 2 to 3 days later, we'll be having our meeting with the advisors. And then probably within several days after that, the hope is within a week or two after that, we would have an emergency use authorization. I can't tell you the exact amount of time because there is enough variables there. So that's where we're headed here.
And Amy, one thing just to add to that, I think Dr. Marks has done a great job of outlining that we don't have that committee meeting scheduled now, but when we do, that will be public so that folks will know in advance.
Okay, thank you.
And they'll be able to watch.
And we will let you know. I will tell you, I promise that we will make sure that you know from here on in what we know. So we'll keep you in the loop as best we can. All right, Dr. Natasha Patterson, National Association of University Women and Public Health Professor asks, should we be concerned with different strains of the virus as we do with the flu?
Another really great question. So this is one of the places where we're working with our global partners, where people are isolating various different types of the virus that are coming in various places. We still don't know for sure whether the various genetic differences that we're seeing are going to be relevant for a vaccine, because it may turn out that the antibodies that one makes against the full-length spike protein, that's the protein that people are being immunized with for this first round of vaccines, essentially, whether there's enough different features of that some of these other genetic alterations won't matter or not. So we're going to just have to, again, we're going to have to see that, but it's being watched very closely, and people are taking it very seriously. It's one of the reasons why you may have read that in some of the Norwegian countries, they're culling all of the minks because minks it turns out that minks can get a COVID-19 like illness, and the worry is that they get a slightly different version, and that could be a problem. So people are taking these very seriously. We're watching for things. We're crossing our fingers as this doesn't turn into a flu-like situation where there's changes that we have to come up with a new vaccine every year. But we'll just have to see, again, by way of transparency, we're just going to have to watch very closely for that. There is one piece of hope that I would say that's actually a positive thing. The nice thing about these mRNA-based vaccines is that it's very easy to change. It's not anywhere near as complicated as the process of changing egg-based influenza vaccines from one strain to an next. It's much easier to change the genetic sequence on these if we have to. So, and some of the other vaccines coming down the pipeline are similar to that. So I'll stop there.
Thanks, Dr. Marks. Okay, I have, I'm sorry, is it Virgin? Is that your name? Is your hand up?
Hi, it's Virginia.
Hi, Virginia. Thank you.
Hi. Yeah, hi, everybody. I was trying to check. So can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Actually happen to be an infectious disease physician. I am representing today the Links Incorporated, but I'm also representing a newly formed organization under the Infectious Disease Society of America, the George Counts interest group. And we represent now about 100 African-American infectious disease physicians. So I'm really happy to be on this call today. The question that I have is, and I don't know whether you'll be looking at this data. I just look at a nightmare of trying to get people to come in for 2 vaccinations. Will you be looking at and ferreting out data to see whether or not one vaccine is going to give enough immunogenicity to people? Because we're a very fluid society. People don't have physicians. You might not be able to find that person after you give one vaccine. So are these kinds of things going to be looked at?
So this is Peter Marks. So again, wonderful question. Even if it turns out that it's not optimal to give just one vaccine, we will be able to look at data so that we'll know what will happen, because I agree with you. I've done enough clinical research in my life to know that even if we try our best, there's only a certain percent that we're going to actually get those 2 vaccines in, and it'll be important to know what it may turn out, just to speculate, it may turn out that whether one vaccine is good enough or not may be based on age. It may be based on other factors. So we will look and cut the data in all different ways so that providers will know, because that way they can actually determine where they need to really put the effort in to making sure someone gets back if there is some population that tends to have a greater risk if they don't get both vaccines.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Marks. So we're right at the hour, but I wanted to just allow one more question from, and also there's a question from Lori Gittins talking about children, efficacy in children. I think I can say there have not been, they haven't been testing in children yet. They're just starting that. And so I don't know that we could really answer that question. But I wanted to have Janice, please, who is going to be one of our partners. Well, she is our partner now, but we're really excited about a program that we'll be working with. Janice, did you have the last question here?
Hey, Amy, can I just jump in? This is Dale from FDA. I wanted to just give Dr. Hahn a chance to say farewell, because I do think he has another appointment right now, and he might have to end his time with us.
Thank you, Dale.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I have another media interview, so not another, but a media interview, so I have to jump off. But I just wanted to thank everyone for being on the call. I saw one of the questions about connecting with faith communities. We at FDA would very much like to do that. And so if there's an opportunity for us to figure out how to do that, we'd appreciate that. And so just thanks to everyone for the very thoughtful questions. We at FDA are here to work on behalf of all of Americans, and just appreciate everything you do to help protect and promote the public health. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you, Dr. Hahn. Really appreciate it. Janice, I'm going to give you the last question or comment.
Thank you so much, Amy. And really what I wanted to do was recognize the fact that Janetta Betch Cole, the president of the National Council of Negro Women, is on the call. And I think she had her hand raised. So if she wanted to say a few words or ask a question, we want to give her the opportunity to do that. And thank everyone from NCNW. You guys really turned out. I appreciate it.
I don't have a question as we move toward closure, but I do have a word of genuine thanks And it goes, first of all, to you, the Sister Executive Director of the National Council of Negro Women, Attorney Janice Mathis. But I also want to reach out to all of our sisters who are on this call. We are with you and you are with us. We happen to use the term affiliates and partners, but we all know the point that if we want to go far, we have to go together. A very special thanks to all of the experts, certainly to you, Ms. Amy Pisani, to Dr. Marks, to Dr. Hahn, to Admiral Aroajo. And let me say this, you were so good in doing this, you get a reward. You get to do it lots more. We have the experience at NCNW, as all of our partners and affiliates on this Zoom have. We took on the census and the need to get our communities to be counted. We took on the need to get out the vote. And look what happened. And so now we can certainly take on vaccine hesitancy. An important part in doing that, though, is the openness and the willingness of public health officials to admit why this hesitancy is there. And I heard that today. Those of us who study this sort of thing know about it, with everything from the Tuskegee experiments on down. But your willingness to admit the mistakes of the past will certainly help us in encouraging our communities to participate in something which is obviously in our own interest. So again, thanks all around.
Well, I don't think I can top that. I will say that this was really the FDA coming to us to request to have me host this meeting, but really it was the FDA that really does truly recognize the need to come to your communities and open up the doors and have this conversation. And we can do it again if you'd like to do so. I can talk to Janice. And I invited plenty of other folks as well. And I think we could do this again as we move forward when the vaccines are rolled out. And so I do really, truly want to thank Dr. Marks and Rear Admiral Aroajo. It's wonderful to have you on the call. Let's do this again as we move forward, and let's include the faith-based communities perhaps on the same call. And please know that Vaccinate Your Family, we are here for you. We are going to take your messages. We're going to bring them to the provider communities that we're also working on with Black nurses and the National Medical Association. And so the questions that you asked today are essential for us to share with our partners. And I can't thank you enough for being so interactive on this call. I know you have lots of other things to do, but please, above all, stay well, isolate, and be with your own families, but please stay well in the coming months. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.
Take care.
A wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.